कोलम से भाई यार सुनते नहीं ना.
We are also reporting to your
being part of the day 2 of the 15th Wiki Global Scale Summit. We are very happy, we are feeling very proud to have all of you today with us. Day 2 is going to begin with a panel discussion, which is on the exchange of best practices in scaling. And we have a list of eminent speakers with us who are today present, and I'm going to call them upon the stage. Please give a huge round of applause for Colonel Vivek Chaudhary, the Director of the National Partnership Association at the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. Colonel sir, please join us on the dais. Mr. Shrikant Sinha, the CEO for Telangana Academy for Skills and Knowledge, Dr. Sakshi Urana, she is a Senior Specialist at the Ministry of Mr. Basab Banerjee, the Co-founder of Magic Billion. Mr. P. Nayak, the CEO for Deshpande Education Trust, and the moderator for the session, Mr. Narayan Ramaswamy, the National Leader for Education and Scale at APMC.
Dr. Gordon speaks. Dr. Gordon speaks.
May I now request Mr. Narayan Ramaswamy to please begin the moderation of the panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Deepthi. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Great to have you all here. It's always a pleasure to be here in Kaushalbond, and it's very nice to see a lot of young faces also today. Thank you so much for turning in. We're having a very interesting session. We're going to speak about some of the best practices that we have seen in skill development, vocational education, employment and related areas. And this is such a vast topic. Even 1 or 2 days for this would be very less. And we've been given 1 hour. And within that 1 hour, there are stalwarts in the panel now. And each of them are going to share a slice, a tiny, wee little tiny slice of their experience. But I'm sure these experiences are something that is worth not just assimilating, but also how do we implement it. Some of the, as consultants, we speak a lot about best practices, but every best practice is as good as how it is implemented, how it is put to context. So my request is, while we all record and assimilate the best practices, let's also think how can we put this to practice in our own context, right? I was very impressed with the multitude of things that are happening. And as in my profession, I do a lot of collating these best practices. In fact, a couple of years before, we even released a book on best practices that the ministry has published, and you can find that there, so I can go on. But what I found interesting is, and I am also part of a global network, and I find a lot of best practices that India is generating, right? One of the things that gives me immense pleasure, normally we look at the West for best practices in our profession. And this is one area where there are a lot of best practices that are happening in India, and I see many of them looking up to these best practices, right? And there are many things that we should learn as well. That's not to say that there are so many things that we need to learn. I was discussing with the panel today morning, when I was in Finland early this year, I realized how University of Applied Sciences coexist with the regular universities, and that has made a huge difference in the education system there and the way people look at vocational education. In India, like the kind of skills universities that we are creating, right? I know there are many governments who are creating skills universities. That is creating a big change. We have amidst us NCVET, and NCVET is making a big difference in terms of standardization. And many of you know there are too many of these standards that are existing. NCQF and NCVET is making a big difference in bringing all these things together. And I can go on, like, the assessment systems that we have is perhaps unique. But having said that, today we are going to learn a lot from how others have done. from different perspectives. We will have somebody who is playing the role of a regulator. We have somebody who has seen many of the schemes that have happened in this country. We have somebody who's worked as a part of the NSDC ecosystem and now part of the private sector is doing a lot of good stuff. People who come from the philanthropic part of it and how we can look at skill development as an occupation. So without further ado, Colonel, I want to turn to you. You play such an important role as a nodal agency that is going to not just promote skill development but also bring in that standardization across. What are your thoughts on this? And more importantly, even now it's not aspirational for youth in this country to take up skill development or vocational education for whatever reasons that is. Is there some of your experience that you want to share along these lines, sir?
Thank you. First of all, thank you. First of all, Jai Hind to everyone.
Jai Hind.
I expect when I speak Jai Hind, Jai Hind, achhi tarah aana chahiye. Yes, one more time, Jai Hind. Yes, so nice to see. And so nice to see the blend of youth and so much of experience sitting on the front row and the row behind. It's always pleasure to interact with youth. And I'm thankful to the organization committee that they have included you all. What we are discussing, it is for you. It is not for the people who have seen all these things. It's upon you to understand what country is doing for you and what we have lined up, so that you can pick and choose. And what Mr. Nayan has just said, it is not aspirational. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it at all. I am starting from this statement. I don't agree is the aspect that in 2020, when government rolled out national education policy, it was to make education, learning, I will not use education, I will say learning as aspiration. So when we talk about learning ka kuch nahi hota. Learning has got no domain of general education, learning has no domain of vocational education or skill education or experiential education. So everything is on the same platform. That's why government thought that we should have a centralized regulatory mechanism as form of a NCVT, when there was a regulatory thing of skill development was fragmented. I will not waste time on that, why government formed NCVT for overarching regulation. So when we take NEP, National Education Policy, which separates all, removes all hard separation from all types of learning. So NEP talks about this. For implementing this, we came out with something called National Credit Framework. When National Credit Framework came, we jointly made all stakeholders, in fact, all educational stakeholders, skill domain, industry, everybody partnered and joined together to make this document called National Credit Framework, which was released last year in 2023. And it says all learning has to be acknowledged. So when learning has to be acknowledged and it has to be credited. When it has to be credited, it goes to your ABC, that is Academic Bank of Credit. It is like your bank account. It is created when you are born, when you start studying. It is like your Aadhaar number. So when it is created, all your learnings, I am talking about all your learnings are credited. It is mapped. It is going to be your future CV. You don't have to create a CV, you just have to share your ABC account number in the form of APAR, that Automated Academic Permanent Account Registry. This is going to be created for everybody, just like whenever your birth certificate is there, it is just like, it is a mandatory thing. So when government talks about these aspects, every credit, everything has to be credited, everything has to be acknowledged. Now accordingly, the framework, that NSQF, National Skill Qualification Framework, was modified based on NEP and NCRF. So the skilling was made in such a way that it is akin to education, where you don't have a demarcation now. It is amalgamated. I have to use this word as amalgamation because mixtures can be separated. Amalgamation ke baad koi separation, there is no separation after amalgamation. So skilling is that way so important that we introduce skilling from 6th standard onwards. When we catch them young, we find things in them. then we expose them to little specialization and subsequently they can process. So there are three verticals to progress in fact. One is the education vertical, second is the skilling vertical, and third is the experiential vertical. Because in our country, a lot of heritage skill, lot of experiential, everything is happening. But when it comes to skilling and comprehensive learning, it is the combination of education and skilling. That's why we say anything applied, any knowledge which is applied is skill. Any knowledge which is applied is skill. I am speaking in English and all people are listening to me, nodding their head, and I am able to convey my thoughts in the way I want you to understand. This is my skill only. Language I would be knowing, but this is my applied knowledge of English and I am able to communicate with you. Considering this aspect, the government has introduced that as per the NEP, as per NCRF, that 50% of your component of your learning can be skill based. So there is no hard separation now. Now skilling has to be aspirational now when your 50% component is skilling. Whatever you are learning has to be applied in the form of, now engineers are there, they go through the engineering qualifications, engineering courses, but they are not industry ready. To make them industry ready, these are the various courses which like robotics, cloud computing, problem solving, critical thinking, like cyber security, IoT. These are the skills which make them industry ready. This is what which is required, and government has started implementing this kind of thing. Now, now you must be asking, this man is only speaking about technical education. No, the major chunk of people are in humanities and other educations other than the technical education. So we have devised other thing also. As I said, anything applied is skill. Now somebody is doing a history honors. So in today's parlance they say history पढ़ के क्या हुआ? Sorry, sometime in Hindi also. History पढ़ के क्या हुआ? What you are going to learn by learning history. So when you dissect history and find out skilling in that, you will find that a history student can be a museum curator, can be a tour guide, can be an interpreter, can be involved in many other activities, can be involved in conservation, archaeological survey of India. So giving one example of it, so when a student joins a university or a college, that university or college, they also offer this kind of gambit of the list of the skill based qualifications. You can pick and choose and you can expertise in that. When somebody leaves that education, he or she is industry ready. Apart from that, how to be industry ready and how to be employable. We are adding employability skills to everything. You may be knowledgeable, but you are not employable. So there has to be some certain thing of soft skill, entrepreneurship skills, language skills. There are other and nationalism also. Desh bhakti bhi aani bahut zaruri hai. So that is very important thing which we are adding and making it compulsory to all sort of things. So overall, Mr. Narayan ke saath, still I am not able to come to a conclusion that he says that is not aspirational. Yes, policy is there, processes are being devised, and how it is to be implemented, subsequently it will become aspirational. We have to work together, and the kids who are sitting there, I think you should have confidence in the policies and the government that this is all made for you, and made for you that you become a good citizen, a better citizen. You already are a good citizen, a better citizen who are contributing toward the economy and the making India a developed nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you so much. That was passionate. Like you said, there is intent, and maybe there is content, and there is also an execution drive. I'm only speaking about the feedback of it, whether it has really happened on the ground, but I'm sure it is happening. But there are some important points that you said. National Credit Framework is so important. We are working on a project called Swayam Plus, where we are inviting industry to offer their courses, whatever is relevant for employability in their industry, and that is converted into a credit course thanks to NCRF framework. So that's how these frameworks are actually linking, making things happen that erstwhile was not possible.
I would like to add one more thing, that recently AICT has come up with a committee which is headed by Dr. Kalsi and erstwhile former chairperson of NCVT, and they are identifying all industry qualifications which are going to be onboarded on Swayam Plus, and how it is required to be creditized, and how the universities can adopt it.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. I can tell you, while we are working in it, there are about 500 courses for about 150 industry who have come and offering these courses. Today, they can offer courses which was not possible. So there are many such things that are evolving good practices. You spoke about Aapar ID, sir. I think in the many digital public good that India is doing, we all know about the UPI part, and similarly Aapar ID is going to be a game changer when it comes to the learning content and learning coefficient of many youngsters here, which is going to be a lifelong ID as a student. And you also talked about vocationalization of school education. But the best part that I liked what you said is skilling is one, I put it in my words, that connects learning to livelihood.
Yes.
You gave a good example of history. That's wonderful. So as somebody who's setting standards as a nodal body, their intent is very clear. Colonel very clearly said we have a slew of measures, best practices that we have done in terms of making skilling not just aspirational but also something that is relevant to that. Let me turn to Srikanth. Sir, you have been doing a great job in your state of Telangana, where as a nodal body at a state level that is making, not just the training providers, but also the youth to look at career paths and other things. I want you to share your perspectives of how did you do it and what are some of the things that everyone else can also gather from that.
Sure, thank you very much. An excellent question and very important also. At the outset, I would like to thank FICCI as well as the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship for providing me this opportunity to share some of our things. I bring greetings to all of you from the youngest state of India. And being called on this forum, being the youngest state, I think is a statement enough to say that yes, whatever we are doing probably is in the right direction itself. When I look at what needs to be done if in a federal structure where we have schemes run by the central government and there are multiple schemes, etc., which are more number driven, how do you bring in focus towards employability? And yesterday when we were talking throughout the day, all the speakers spoke about the involvement of the corporates and the industry itself. And that's where probably we started. We started with a survey of the industry itself when the state was getting bifurcated, and a survey was done to find out how many locals were employed and whether they were matching up to the expectations of the industry. And that's where they found out that only 10% locals were employed and people are not matching up to the expectations of the industry. Yes, the fact is, no one employs you, especially the young friends who are sitting behind, no one employs you for knowing the definition of a screwdriver. You should know how to use one. And the problem these days is very simple. In our day and age, and Mr. Ramaswamy, you'll agree with me, we used to play with something called as Meccano. Then it became mechanics. Then I think the young kids over here start playing with Lego. But these days kids have done one thing only, it's let go. Play only with mobile. I think creativity is most important that you need to bring into the system. So what we at Telangana Academy for Skill and Knowledge did was, how do you ensure participation of the industry? So first thing we did something quite differently. We said skilling for employability cannot happen in the final year. It's more like eating a 500 mg capsule before you're going for your medical examination. Doesn't help anyone, right? So we started skilling in a laddered approach right from the first year itself. And this is across domains. So we work with pharmacy. As you know, 40% of the global blood drugs are manufactured in Telangana, 33% of the global vaccines are manufactured over there. So pharmacy is also very important apart from IT, where we are one of the lead exporters. So IT, pharma, civil, mechanical, we concentrate on all of that. And we sit over and above the academic curriculum, providing inputs. We work with 80 plus partners, offering 110 plus programs where we skill students in a laddered approach. So that's the first approach. And the best part is industry is loving it, industry is liking it. And the fact for that is that more than 500 companies advertise their entry-level jobs on our portal itself. Right? So we are a platform as far as the industry is concerned. And if you look at our vision and mission, it is a threefold thing. First is employability for skilling for employability. Second is providing the right, ready, trained manpower as, when, where the industry wants it, which talks about the role industry is playing. So we work very closely with with organizations which are trade bodies, CII, FICCI, HICIA, NASSCOM. We work very closely with them. And just to give an example over here, we realized that most of our faculty members today, and due apologies to any educators who are sitting over here, 10 to 15 years ago, people who could not get into the IT industry ended up doing their MTechs and becoming faculty members. So they don't have industry experience. So we run a program called Project Drona, along with HICIA, where we are actually doing faculty internships.
Fantastic.
Right? So bringing in live industry problems, etc., into the classrooms through the faculty. And they are also shadowing the actual industry people for a period of 1 day to 2 days to 1 week. So at least industry is being brought back into the classroom. So that's the second thing. Then we also work with industry verticals. For example, let's say cybersecurity. So we run finishing schools where we skill people short term, a burst kind of a thing where we skill so that 70% can be recruited. And the third is the most unique model where, and that talks about how we work with the company itself. We don't look at the skills, but we break it down into competencies. So just a case to point, when Safran, the aircraft engine manufacturer, entered Telangana, what we did was we looked at what they were looking at. Of course, they were looking at aeronautical engineering students, 3 institutions, not enough students coming out of it. We took them to our polytechnics, right? So talking about engineering, but in polytechnics, we took them to the mechanical as well as the electrical engineer, diploma students. We looked at the skills from them, hand dexterity, 3D visualization, spatial thinking. We didn't get paper pencil test, we gave them nuts and bolts to fasten and fasten.
Wow.
So we were actually checking how competent a person was. Iteration can be stopped if we know what are the interests and attitudes. Yesterday also it was mentioned. And that's what we checked for. And that's how we recruited. We trained these people. And the best part is the industry folks over here, I welcome you to Telangana also. And the best part is that wherever I don't have subject matter experts, or like I didn't have aircraft engines in my labs, I went to the industry shop floor. We got the subject matter experts from the industry. And once the program was 1/3 over, we converted into a hire, train and deploy model. So these are some of the best practices that we've been doing. And of course, third, our vision is creating an entrepreneurial mindset, which is ensuring that we are able to democratize entrepreneurship and innovation.
Wonderful.
So I'll stop with this and maybe further we'll talk. Thanks.
So wonderful, wonderful. This is a big round of applause. Like, I think this is great. Especially the local industry and how you connected local industry. Hyderabad being known for pharma, you picked pharma as an example. That I think is across the world, I see this as a best practice. Go to your local industry, ensure they are involved in the skilling. And the way you also suggested how you check for intent and attitude along with the technical skills so that the students are relevant there. Very impressive to know about the initiative Drona, Project Drona, where the trainers are immersed into what they usually don't know. I mean, usually the trainers are in their own world where they have not seen what is happening. And it's a little unfair to go and tell them, like, teach what industry does. So the big takeaway is the way you are very closely associating with industry and bringing skilling to industry and vice versa. That, I guess, is one of the reasons why we see big success. Thank you so much, Shrikant, for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
Let me turn to Dr. Sakshi Khurana. Ma'am, you are at a vantage point. Niti Aayog has an oversight of many things that are happening, and you are also having an oversight of what the ministry does, not just what the ministry does, what the state governments do, what various institutions do at a policy level. I also understand you have a compendium of best practices of what various players have been doing. It'd be great if you can share some of those that have caught your attention.
Thank you, first of all, to FICCI for inviting me, and also to Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. It's wonderful to be a part of this panel. As you said, that a major part of our role at Niti Aayog is to learn from best practices and to have a lot of knowledge sharing as we heard about Telangana, there are so many other states which are really working on a lot of industry collaborations, making skills relevant for the job market, connecting skills and livelihoods, also doing a lot of work at the district level. So at NITI Aayog we have a portal called NITI for States, the NFS portal. So as part of that, we have over 7,400 best practices which we have collated, and also over around 1,000 policy knowledge products, which includes a repository of different central government policies, a repository of different state government policies, a matrix which is a comparison of what different states are covering, what different ministries are covering. So I would really urge all of you here, our students, our industry leaders, as well as policy makers, to take a look at the NITI for State portal, to really draw some learnings from best practices, given that all of you are engaged as learners or as trainers or as at the forefront of policy making. In skill development and livelihood sector in the portal, we have over 750 best practices that you could take a look at. Of course, there is a lot of emphasis right now on internationalization of skills. Last year, the New Delhi Declaration talked about mutual recognition and harmonization of skills, with all G20 countries coming together to work on really looking at their skill qualifications, to align the skill qualifications. NSDC on its part is working very actively. There is NSDC International going all out to train young people in skills which are relevant and which can make them employable in different countries. Given that that's also the motto of the Ministry of Skill and Government of India, to train the youth for the world market, not just for the national labour market, but also for the world. Skilling for the world is the motto. So a constant part of that exercise is assessing the changing dynamics of demand in different countries. I think that's an exercise which is being undertaken and which needs to be continued and scaled up in future also, which all states as well really need to look at, that what are the job roles which are in demand in different countries, which can be tapped, which the youth can be trained in, and then really tapping that demand through skill training, through mobility partnerships with different countries with the help of NSDC and Ministry of External Affairs. Some of the states, in fact, are really doing that. Telangana, I know, is doing it. Andhra Pradesh, Kerala has these are some of the states with a very advanced system of international labour mobility, skilling for international labour mobility. So for so many of our states, we have examples of these states like Kerala, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, even Tamil Nadu to learn from. Madhya Pradesh, some of you might know, is coming up with the Global Skills Park, where they're really creating an institution where skills for the global job market would be taught. So there's a lot of focus there also on internationalization of skills. Odisha, many of us would already know, has the World Skills Center in Bhubaneswar, where again candidates are trained for international skills. They have tie-ups with Singapore, and they have ADB supporting them. And there's a lot going on, and World Skills Center is really a model skill center to look up to. Given India's specific advantage that we have, I mean, you talked about India is a country where so many other countries can learn from. So our districts, when we go down, we can, in fact, we have a flagship program called the Aspirational Districts Program, and now also the Aspirational Blocks Program, where we're going down and looking at development of blocks across the country. So there's a lot of potential in every district, every block of the country, and every district, every block has a very unique potential. It could be handloom in one district, it could be art, coming up with artifacts in another district, it could be making achar or pickles in another district. Any other district would have a lot of cultivation of fruits like apples in Kashmir, for instance. So tapping this potential, which did happen through the district skill development plans under the Sankalp scheme initiated by Ministry of Skill Development, where every district came up with their own skill development plans, looking at local demand, looking at demand outside the district, and then working to really tap on that demand, training manpower within the district to be able to take up job roles outside of the district and within the district itself. That district, sorry, I lost my mind. So the district skill development plans, the district skill committee, which was formed in all districts, it looks at planning as well as implementation. It looks at industry tie-ups for the district, inviting a lot of industries to train as well as to set up their factories within the district. Odisha, just going back to Odisha for a second, Odisha has a motto of from going local to global. So Odisha is really tapping up, Odisha is really trying to tap up on the local potential, building on the local potential and training their workforce to really work on the, not just the local but also the global potential and global market. So I think that's something which we really have as an advantage in India, tapping the potential of the district. Going forward, what we really need to work on is ensuring that the skilling which is happening is world class. Even skilling, we see a lot of small skilling set up in aspirational districts where women, from SHGs are being taught a skill. But sometimes what happens is after being trained in the skill, they don't really find employment, or there's no continuity after being trained in a particular skill. So at the district level, we really need industry to go down to the district level to engage with skill trainees, especially women and girls who are getting trained in such skills. We really need industry to engage with them to have onboarding of such candidates from the district to their job programs, to their shop floor. And I think these are the initiatives going forward that can really make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thanks. That was, in the short time you gave a lot of insights. Nidhi for State is something that we all are looking forward to. I'm sure each of us, as you can see, many of them on their mobile phones, they are all searching that actually. They are going to their Nidhi for State is happening. So thank you so much for sharing. But I think it's also important how you touched upon the global job roles that are emerging, right? And not to talk about the global skills hub in Madhya Pradesh, and also the national NSDC-I, an initiative where we can bring in some of the opportunities that are there globally for the benefit of the Indian youth. Many initiatives. World Skills Center in Odisha is a good example. I'll also add to it the ASAP program in Kerala, Nan Mudalvan in Tamil Nadu, the Skilled in Odisha program. So each state has come up with something that is very unique. But you made a clear point on going to the districts and blocks and how taking a cue from you, Srikanth, like and how the industry should not at a state level but should go at a block level and a district level. Point well made. I'm sure in the next forum you will have best practices for that also. Thank you so much. Let me turn to Basab Banerjee. Basabda, as we fondly call him, is been in his career, I guess, right from your army days, sir. You've been in skill development and training people and others for many years now. So thank you so much for joining us. In your view, I always think employability is the core for skilling. You might have every other good practice, but it is not employable, then maybe it's not, in a sense, worth it. So I know you're passionate about bringing that employability quotient to skilling. What are some of your experiences that you can share on how do we bring in that employability quotient, enhance that as we do our skill development programs?
Thank you, Nana. If you read what's written on the screen, then you won't be able to focus on what I'm saying because I'm conscious of time. After many assignments with the National Skill Development Corporation and the Asian Development Bank, working with state skill missions, we now run a company called Magic Billion, and we focus exclusively on global talent mobility. And we feel that's the cutting edge of where all the skilling needs to convert to employability. So I'll be just touching on the points that I feel are best practices in this area. And then if you have questions later, then I'll carry on. And I must say thank you, Vicky, for this eminent panel. I've made copious notes of what my colleagues on the panel have spoken, really very thought-provoking. So first, let me talk about global talent mobility. Those of you who would want to understand. A few tips of how you can run successful global talent mobility firms. It's a need of the hour, like a lot of people have said, including Dr. Sakshi. The government recognizes it. We are a small band of companies which have possibly got it right. So India is now giving a good run to the likes of Philippines, Vietnam, Morocco, Tunisia, and others who specialize in talent mobility across borders. So what are the few things that we need to do as best practices? The first one is keep employer first. There's no point running a welding program in a state-of-art welding infrastructure if you don't have an employer in mind. And I'm not talking country. You can't be training for welders in Belgium because every employer is 20% different. 80% will be similar to what the other welding companies in Belgium will be, but that 20% will be different. So we as Magic Billion, we curate the requirement of every single employer. So from the time we hit a contract with an employer, it takes us 8 to 10 months to start sourcing in India, because we are sitting with them and understanding how they are exactly going to select that candidate. And that's where Gunjal's point about creating those competency frameworks is so important. Today we are dealing with a 92nd client, and for all these 92 clients across 12 countries and across 34 job roles, we have got an individual competency map. And so the criticality of the employer should be the first thing. The second is, once you've got the competency map, the training that you will do has to be unique to them. And the beauty of India is that when you search, you will find some place, a training provider, either government or private, who will be able to fulfill exactly the kind of skills that you require. I was myself surprised. None of you will know, but there is a lot of NDT, non-destructive testing technicians in India. I never knew this role existed in India. And so we got a demand from Germany, but we have fulfilled it. It is only because India lends you that ability to do world-class training and testing. So The second best practice is to be able to search out someone who is doing that kind of practice. Third best practice in global talent mobility scaling is to do with assessments. What kind of material will be used, what will be the technique of assessment, and what will be the tolerance or method of saying that a person is pass or fail must be the start point of all the training. And typically as a global talent mobility firm, we fund the movement of the assessment teams from global employers to India. We bring them to India. If you've been following me on LinkedIn, you'll find last week we had a Russian company. They came for the first time in India. They refused to come. We took 2 months to convince them to come to India. And we have 57 bright welders who went to Russia now. So that's the part on talent mobility. Now I want to touch on a second area where I feel there are some best practices that I've seen. That is in technical training. Now Piyush Goyal is saying only 17% of the GDP of India is being covered by manufacturing, and he's hitting it big for Make in India. But we will need the people to fulfill these requirements. Now I find that there are some excellent technical training institutes in India, both government and private. First and foremost, of course, is the requirement of infrastructure, which, like you all said, the WSCs and the global skill parks and some state-of-art ITIs, they all have very good infrastructure. But I think there are 3 more things that are required. First is to have an industry body which tells you exactly, precisely what should be the skills or the competencies that are required for any job role on which you do the training over there. That's extremely important. Second, to have a very good curriculum, great instructors, a great training operations management, and finally assessments which are carried out by employers. So I want to just talk about one organization. If any of you in the policy making of India have not been there, you must go there. I'll actually talk about 2 organizations, NTTF at Bangalore and GTTI at Coimbatore. They have taken training to the next level because it's not just the infrastructure which will get you to where you want to go, but you need to have the trainers, you need to have the pedagogy, and it has to be something like, we in the armed forces used to have when we were training somebody for, let's say, a commando role or for a pilot's role, for example. You have to be extremely precise with the way the training is happening. Only then you will get success. And I'm happy to tell you that at NTTF today, we have got 7 German employers who are given offer letters to 52 of their candidates. So that's the kind of training that they do. And that's the second part on technical training. Third, I want to talk on internships. There's a lot of talk on internships. You would have seen government now wants to push the top 500 companies who are spending CSR money into internships, and they're going to co-fund that. So funding is a great, great thing. And if there's co-funding, that's great for internships. Internships is great when you're on the top IT companies also benching people whom they are giving offers. So in internships, I want to just request you to just please look at a best practice called dual education of Germany. What we do right is the training part, but what we don't do right is the industry integration part of internship or apprenticeship. In Germany, there is the most important are 2 components. One, there's someone called a Meister. In every organization or any organization which is giving employment to the apprentices, they have something called a Meister, and the Meister is the one who's certified by the government to be able to ensure that the learning that is happening at the place of work is similar to the academic curriculum that is happening. And if that is fulfilled in the internships of our country, I feel that there will be much more alignment of employment to internship and apprenticeships. Thank you. Nana, I thought this is what I could share.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Basabda. As always, it was packed, right? We perhaps are doing a bit of injustice to every panelist to giving such a short time, but that's part of my role, but this is wonderful. You shared a lot of things, particularly I like this individual competency map that you just said, maybe one of the best practices that we can adopt here, where we draw this individual competency map that is tied to specific company usage, not even industry at that level of specifications. I like the point that you said about assessment. I do believe assessment has been one of the weak links. Colonel may not agree, but
I agree.
Oh, you agree? Maybe that is something that and I'm also glad that you say you're bringing in assessment agencies from other countries here, because that I thought is going to open up a whole bunch of how assessments happen and also make it a little more broad-based. I'm so glad that you've taken an initiative on that. Last but definitely not the least, the internship part. I think this budget we saw some really good initiatives happening in internship and a real intent to make the internships happen. So maybe we are moving towards many of these best practices getting implemented as we go. But thanks so much for sharing your thoughts. Sir, I'm going to turn to you. The lone face of NGOs, right? And you had a corporate career and then you moved into NGOs, and your NGO is I just want to your thoughts on what role can not-for-profit organizations play, and is there any best practice that you see in the way you can influence policy, training providers, individuals, or counseling them across? What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. Privileged to be on this panel. I represent the Deshpande Foundation. We have this purpose of rural transformation. So we have a very clear objective to transform the rural India. And one lever we are using to do that is to get young people from rural India to get into good jobs, earn, and when their money goes back home, it's going to transform their villages. So that's the hypothesis which we are working on. And I really like what Mr. Bhaskar Banerjee mentioned, that if you talk to a young person and say scaling, you may not interest him. But if you say, are you keen to get into a job, I think all hands will go up. So it's not really scaling. So if you have to scaling to a young person, it's about the job that's waiting for them at the end of it. Now, if I have to share a few practices being in an NGO. Now, we are an NGO with a bit of a difference. I'm not going to claim anything, but having been set up by somebody who's been an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, we would like to be an organization with the heart of a social worker, but in terms of execution, we would like to be the best in the industry. So we would like to compare with the industry. Personally, I come from the corporate, having spent about 3 decades in the corporate, and most of my career in talent acquisition and talent development. So I moved from one side of the table to the other. Earlier, I was the demand, now I'm on supply side. So if I have to share a few best practices that we have at the foundation, number one is we have an end purpose for everything that we are doing. We measure our success in scaling not by the number of people we scale, but what is the CTC that's being converted by all the efforts that we do. What's the percentage placement and what's the CTC that our students earn in that year. Because for us as a social impact, that CTC is going to be not just 1 year, it's for the next 35, 40 years of their working career, that's going to convert to impact for the community that they come from. So we have always worked with the demand, knowing the demand. So all our programs are demand led. Like Mr. Basar said, we first talk to the industry, get to know what are their requirements, and probably even have a tie-up with them on, we have MOUs with companies where we know what is their hiring going to be for the next year, how much in which quarter, and therefore we try to sync up our programs with the need of the industry. The other thing that we do is, many of our trainers are those who have already had industry experience and then come and join us. So we have trainers with industry experience on our roles. Number 3, our trainers are getting trained by employers, getting certified by employers, and come back and train. So when we train for a particular industry, let's say healthcare or artificial intelligence, some parts of the jobs that a fresher can go and do. Let me be very specific. We are training or skilling people only for first-time job owners. There's another skilling for existing people working in companies, and I'm sure a working employee knows how to get themselves upskilled. Even their employer would be keen to get them upskilled. So we are working with people seeking their first jobs. So we get our trainers certified by our employers, and many times we invite employers to come and conduct trainings at our campus. So the industry connect, I think is very, very important for anybody who's in the skilling industry. Number two, I think somewhere we can't be under false belief that or having pompous goals that we want to do this and that, because when I train a fresher, let me be very clear, they are not going to be doing jobs at the top end of that stack. A fresher is always going to start at the bottom. So if I talk of artificial intelligence today, are they going to be doing something at the top end of the stack? No, they have to start at the bottom. So our goals, talking to industry, is roles at the bottom of the stack in that particular industry. If I talk of artificial AI, we are working with an organization which is working on autonomous vehicles, Amazon drone delivery, but their roles are at the bottom of the stack because that's where they need to start. Yeah, as part of their career, they can grow up. So yeah, I think the second best practice that I mentioned is a strong industry connect. As skills players in the skilling industry, we need to be having that. And number three is skin in the game. So there are different stakeholders in this whole ecosystem. There are players like us who are trying to skill people with this intention of making a difference to communities. There are students who want to benefit from this, and then there are employers. I think everybody needs to have a skin in the game in this whole process. So though we are an NGO, a little discord here is that we collect a fee from the student to skill them. Now, the fee that we collect, we also make sure that it is affordable by somebody from the bottom of the pyramid. So it roughly accounts to 25-30% of our cost of skilling. The rest of it comes from CSR, and a large part of it comes from our patrons. So without that skin in the game, I think we wouldn't be having a success rate of about 95% placement rate. Every student in the cohort, when they are going to their program, is all keyed into, at the end of these 4 months, I need to be having my ID card of an Infosys or a TCS. They're all very absolutely clear. And there are no complaints if they have to work 12 hours to be earning that. So all of them are there in that room to earn a job. I think that commonality of purpose is something working beautifully for us in everything that we do. Our job becomes much easier, no complaints. If we push them, if they have to work night shift, because the reality is in India, people have to work night shifts. We are serving the globe, we are back office to the globe, so we have to be working night shifts. So there are no complaints from students if we conduct classes at night, we give them projects at night. So I think some of these are best practices that we have evolved over time, and we'll be glad. And I also look at colleges, because unless we get the academic education system, universities on board in all of this, we will be just addressing a small part of the whole problem. I think as all of us is skilled players, we are somewhere trying to do denting or fitting something which has come out of the factory. All this actually skilling has to become part of the education system and not something that is outside it. So I think as players in this industry, we need to collaborate with colleges, we need to collaborate with universities, and hopefully somewhere down the line, everything that we are doing becomes part of the education system and not a special fitting outside the system. So I think these are things that I would like to share as somebody who's worked on the ground and with students.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Naik. That was very insightful. And I also noticed it doesn't matter whether you are a regulator, whether you are a private sector skilling player, or you are a state government doing it, or an NGO. There are a few points that are coming out very clearly. One, stay close to industry. listen to industry, if possible get them to train themselves or train the trainer, and let your curriculum be associated with whatever job skills rather than at a broad level. Most importantly, the assessment systems that needs to be aligned to it. We also talked about the global opportunities, and many of you spoke about how do we align our curriculum and assessments towards global.
Work tomorrow.
I know we've taken a lot of time, but I don't want to miss the panel's view in kind of converging. So if I like a rapid, quick round, what are your three major, whatever, recommendations to any of the stakeholders? It could be the government, it could be the trainer, it could be the student. What are some three things, not for all of them, any three things, it could be for any of the stakeholder. What would you, give as takeaway for the audience? And while we close, we might have some time for audience questions. My earnest request is please have them as questions, and your question will not be for more than 30 seconds, and I would like your compliance on that. But we'll finish this round before we come to you.
I would like to say here you missed out a very important stakeholder. The stakeholder is the society as such, and we are talking of skilling. Skilling has got a different mindset. We used to be that it's an end state of education, vocational education. So the fourth pillar is the society, parents and other people who are there who would like to graduate vis-a-vis a plumber. I am very sure when you apply, though I am not a supporter of anybody mobility outside India में ही सारा काम हो सकता है. But if you apply for a US visa, a plumber may get a US visa, a trained plumber, but a graduate may not because of the competency. So first takeaway is recommendation is that society as a whole society has to be included as a prominent and a main stakeholder as such. Second aspect, what Mr. Nayak brought out and all of us, all the panelists spoke about is the integration of industry. Now here don't take that industry as a technical or production industry as anything. It can be a social industry also, an NGO, normal thing. When I talked about history is not just history. There can be psychology, there can be sociology, and there can be n number of things. We should not be just focusing that skilling means only ITIs or those kind of technical education. They are the smaller portion of the country. The major chunk, the 43,000 colleges which are there and 1100 universities are there in the country. So if you see, major of them are humanities and the social science and other sectors. We have to concentrate on this thing. Madam is from economics background, as a sociology background from the Delhi School of Economics. Now she is sitting here, and that's what, and she's there in the Niti Aayog. She has got a major role to play that give a boost to social sector. Second recommendation. Third recommendation is there that we as a stakeholder, as important stakeholder as a government, is an important stakeholder as an industry, and the major stakeholder which are there, the states and the UTs, they have to come together in the forum is provided by Niti Aayog, that together we should work. There are three things which are required, which all three required best practices. First, during policy making. Second thing, the process for the policy. And third is implementation. If we are thinking, we have got synchronized mind and we are working together, then as a federal state, our education and skilling as part of the concurrent list, we can progress together. So this harmonization is very much required for skilling and the country to come out and become a world leader and also the skill capital of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll perhaps go in the same order. Shrikant?
Yeah. Thank you. So three things, and before I move to that, just 30 seconds on one more thing that Dr. Khurana mentioned. So Telangana, under the honorable vision of the Chief Minister and the IT Minister, has created a Young India Skills University, which has 17 schools. So it is not the traditional schools which are there, but you have fashion, you have animation, gaming, etc., and all these things. So there are multiple opportunities. Second is, ITIs have been the way they have been ever since they were created. So it's important for them. And over there in Telangana, 65 ITIs have changed to advanced technology centers along with Tata Technologies. So that's one thing which is there. Now coming to the recommendations, I think First is that address the educators and students. Educators, my thing is that please, most of our students are first generation learners. Please counsel them, because today everyone is heading to the BPO industry or the BPM industry. We are only into operations and services. I'm saying it's not bad to be in that, but please ensure that you also get them to have other industry exposure also. To the students, I would like to say, the best way of doing research, where you have the best of the industry expertise, you have the academicians over there, everything is hackathons. So please ensure that you participate in as many hackathons that you can during your student life, because that's real-time application of what it is. Another recommendation to use top learning syntaxes. Focus on application. Educators, evaluation, when we are talking about, we should have authentic assessments. It should be application of knowledge and not theory that is being asked. So ensure that you move in that direction. Now coming to policy, I think policy should not be based on just numbers. Unfortunately, for everything we have been chasing numbers. So policy makers, while you create a document which could be a 200-page document, and I am also guilty of being a policy maker there, I think it's important to create a 15 or a 10-page document which is actionable. So these are my 3 recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Srikanth. Very valuable. Thank you so much. Dr.
Thank you. I do really agree with all the recommendations that you all have mentioned so far. Just adding to that, again, from the point of view of policy makers, convergence is something that everyone talked about, and bringing convergence through bringing industry, academia, and government on the same page, really ensuring we constantly talk about the fact that when we pass out from the university, so many times our learnings are not so relevant for the industry. So that can be solved only through industry participation right from the start. And then going on to my second point, which I also mentioned before, is industry going into the district. ITIs still remain the backbone of skilling for our country. We have 15,000 ITIs, so the infrastructure is there. Really revamping the ITIs, as you mentioned, what is happening in Telangana, really revamping the ITIs where industry can play a really solid role in the curriculum, ensuring industry exposure for students, ensuring that at least some part of the time is spent in the industry for a student and not entirely in the classroom. Also for the trainers, I feel industry exposure is really important. So trainers have to be continuously in sync with what is happening in the industry. What are the latest technologies? How to application, as you said. So for trainers to be continuously in sync with what is happening is extremely important. Apprenticeships, and the next session is on apprenticeships, but apprenticeships is something going forward we really need to keep emphasizing as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Basudha?
My wish list of 3 things. One, I would say that everybody is talking about how industry needs to be in the center of this bridge between skilling and employment. Very good models available globally. India tried with the sector skill councils. That model is still relevant. But I do feel that I love what the European nations do. The chamber is partly funded by the government.
Yes, correct.
Every employer having more than 10 employees has to be a member of the local chamber. That is how the LMIA, the Labour Market Information, is generated by every chamber. And every chamber has a craft department which is responsible to every employer and to the government to ensure fulfillment of labor requirement of time. Now look at how this changes the paradigm. It is no more the government's responsibility. It is the responsibility of the industry to fulfill its own requirement. So therefore they
And we find they're visiting us from Netherlands, from Belgium, from Germany. They're visiting us, sourcing talent for their employers, and therefore creating an ecosystem which is totally demanded. So that is one. Second, I feel that I'm understanding that there are a lot of best practices that are happening at various places. My request to the policymakers is to make forums where these best practices can be shared. Let us invite private and government sector players in any part of skilling to come together on a quarterly basis so that we can share the best practices. Very good point. And thirdly, my request to the government, we as global talent mobility players, and we are 6,000 of us who have got the recruitment license from Government of India. There are 14 mobility agreements that the Government of India has signed. Let them not be pieces of paper. We are there with you. Please, as government, as policy makers, take us to these countries. Let us have an interaction with the chambers, with the employers. Let us carve out our MOUs, our contracts, and let us really make India the skill capital of the world.
Very well said, sir. Mr. Desh.
So yeah, recommendations. I think the solution for the scale of the problem that we have in India would really to be getting the mindset shift among the colleges. Somewhere in the colleges, the thought is still what we are doing is helping them get a degree certificate or something. I think that's a big change we need to have. And if I have to carry back something from the last 2 days here, it would be something that somebody from Medha Foundation yesterday mentioned, that they are starting to work with the placement officer in the college. I think if we can actually make it happen, where the placement officers in the college actually start owning that a certain percentage of their students are skilled enough to get into jobs. This ecosystem is there in the engineering colleges, but unfortunately not there in the other colleges. So somewhere if we can seed that idea among different colleges, I think that would be a small step which can give some big results. And if there is, I know there are policies which insist that every college must have a placement officer, but most colleges it is just a formality. If we can actually activate it, I think we'll see good results from colleges.
Together.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful panel. We didn't know the time fly by, and I know we are well past the time. I just wanted to conclude by saying there was so much positivity when we discussed this. We discussed so many of specific good practices, best practices that we are following, but at the same time we also put up some of those things that we are not doing and we would like to happen. We shared some of what is happening across the globe and we wanted to see it in India. Best among them is how do we involve industry into the training and make sure that happens. And we can go on. And one of the key takeaways is to have more such sessions and also make it more public so that best practices are shared and are implemented, contextualizing to whatever they are doing. With this, I know we are running out of time. Maybe the questions we'll collate and ask later, if that's the format that is. Thank you so much for your patient listening, and I'm sure you enjoyed it. I enjoyed the session. I would like to thank all the panelists for taking time out and sharing some of their best wisdom in this forum. Thank you all.
वही यहीं पे क्लोज अच्छा मुझे कवरेज के लिए टू फोर्स देखना.
We will now have a special address by Dr. Robert Gordon, who is the President and Vice Chancellor for the University of Windsor, followed by the special address of Shri Atul Kumar Tiwari, the Secretary of Ministry of Peace Development.
We're going to orchestrated.
I request you to please be seated as we take the diet. Welcome Dr. Gordon and you can have a
Yes, my privilege.